Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this public hearing, Springettsbury Township Board of Supervisors to order. We have 2 members in person and 2 members online. And so I'd like to call the meeting to order and turn things over to Attorney Sanders to...
That's the regular meeting.
Regular meeting only, I think.
We don't care about that.
Just a little pledge thing. Thank you, Supervisor Bishop. We're here tonight to consider or hold a hearing for the consideration of proposed ordinance number 2025-06, which is amending, sorry, I'm pulling up the new system here, Dory. Bear with me one second. There it is. So this is a proposed amendment, text amendment for ordinance number 2025-06, an ordinance of the Township of Springettsbury, York County, Pennsylvania, amending the Springettsbury Township zoning ordinance to incorporate off-street parking provisions in and modify the building height requirements of the flexible development district. The way that this hearing will run tonight is I will confirm that all procedural notifications have been done. We will then request that any witnesses that will be testifying tonight will be sworn in. Anybody that is asserting standing related to this text amendment will also be requested to be sworn in at that time. Then we will have representatives for the developer or the applicant for their text amendment to come up and present their case. Supervisors are permitted to ask questions then, and then anybody having standing is also then permitted to ask questions. We will then allow for public comment, and then if the supervisors so deem, they can discuss and then vote or adjourn to an executive session where we can discuss it further. Okay, does that make sense for everybody? Okay. I'll start with the swearing in. Can I have any witnesses that will be testifying tonight? Please stand. If I could have you raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God? Okay, thank you. Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Heilman, was the proposed amendment forwarded to the County Planning Agency at least 30 days before the public hearing?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And the public notice for the public hearing was published by our office, not more than 30 days, and the second not less than 7 days from the public hearing. So we have handled that. And have owners, were the owners notified as well? I don't believe that. No, there's no land or mineral. We're good here. Okay. All right, with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Attorney Nihila.
Good evening. I'm Tom Nihila from law firm of Barley Snyder. Appreciate you guys having the hearing for us. As indicated, we are talking about a text amendment to your zoning ordinance, amending 2 sections to allow for the off-street parking and a height increase in your flexible development district. We kind of submitted this with a separate application that we'll talk about at 7 o'clock. So although this will be a text amendment affecting all of the flexible development zone, we do have a project that's specific to it. So I'll skip that unless you guys have questions of our specific application of these amendments. So the 2 amendments that we are submitting is to change the parking with regard to only multifamily dwellings in the flexible development. So it only applies to multifamily, not any other use. And what we're asking to do is to amend the text to allow that parking ratio to go down to 1.5 spaces per unit as opposed to what it's currently at 2 spaces per unit. And we have a multifamily proposed building. We have some statistics. I'm here tonight with Brandon Johnson and Jake Krieger. Brandon is with Monarch Development Group. He's the applicant for both for the text amendment and our proposed project. Jake is our engineer with RGS. And again, with regard to the parking, we are requesting the reduction, and we feel that that is supported by the users, the bedroom spaces, and the amount of parking that will actually be needed in connection with multifamily. Brandon has developed a number of different projects. We have some real live evidence of that reduced parking ratio, so we do think it fits. With regard to the height, what we have done, we're proposing, right now, currently, you can go to 45 feet under your current ordinance. We are asking to increase that to 55 feet plus an additional foot for every foot that you increase the setback. We paralleled this exact text amendment from your ordinance from the mixed use zone. So if this language looks familiar, it is because it's currently in your ordinance, just in a different zone. And we've kind of, like I said, there's basically an increase. So it would be a minimum of 55, and then that can be increased as we reduce or increase our setbacks. We'll actually be taking advantage of that in our proposed use that we'll be talking about at 7 o'clock in our flexible unit. So those are the two text amendments. Brandon, would you like to come up? I'd like to, if you can fill a little bit in on the parking, a little bit of the flavor there of what we're trying to do. The height we can talk about with regard to, again, our proposal, but of course this text amendment would be for the entire district.
Hi, Brandon Johnson with Monarch Development Group. Yes, we have a plan for this, the property, portion of the property that you're seeing up there, and that will be discussed at the 7 o'clock meeting as well. We've developed other multifamily developments as well. We have developed one very similar to what we're proposing here. This development we're planning to call Signature Flats at Galleria, a deal that we did called Signature Flats at Hershey in Hershey. At 50 Northeast Drive in Hershey, had 75 units and a mix, about a half and half mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, which is what we're proposing to have here. And there are parking demands are about 1.3 per unit, so 1.5 is even in excess of that. And 1.3 is also consistent with the traffic generation manual we reference in our application. I'm happy to answer any questions if needed.
I do have a question. So when you say in Hershey, the parking is 1.3, is that based on a requirement or what you actually experience?
It was, no, the requirements were less than that. We wouldn't need any more than that, I guess I would say, based on what we have at Hershey. I forget what their parking requirements were, but they were actually, I think on average, they were like, I think they were 1.5. I think it was 120. Yeah, something like that. It was about 1.5. So it's very similar requirement, and then our demand is less than that. We have empty spaces in our parking lot at Hershey.
Okay, so when you say your demand, somebody actually counted at some point? Or
Yes,
something.
yep.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you.
that's what I was getting at.
Can I ask, what is the occupancy ratio today? Are they half empty?
Oh, no, that development's almost full. We have,
Okay.
yeah, yep.
Well,
There's always a handful that are vacant as turnovers happen.
but
Yeah.
you're basing the 1.3 on almost total occupancy.
Yeah,
That's
correct. I'd say
important. Thank you.
95% occupancy, I guess.
There's a parking manual that a lot of people cite too, and the issue is that these multifamilies, of course, are kind of an open parking lot that aren't dedicated spaces. Everyone's allowed to park, so it does provide for more parking than is necessary. So we've been trying to reduce the overall amount of parking for impervious and green space and runoff and that type of thing, as for spaces that aren't needed. And then the height, again, what we're proposing, and this is, again, only in your flexible development overlay zone. So your intent of that flexible zone is to kind of create ways for developers to come in and have a little flexibility with regard to the design. It's a way to allow for infill. So again, what we're trying to do, your flexible zone, you have a flexible district and then you have a flexible overlay that's allowed in various base zones. Most of those are all kind of more of your congested areas. The idea being that if we can go up, we don't have to spread out. So we can use less space and try to infill some of these areas. Our project is at the mall, so I mean, it's a perfect area of like why we want to be able to go up as opposed to out. So that's a little bit of why the justification is for the height. And I forgot to mention, both of these, or this text amendment and both parts of the text amendment were submitted both to the county and your Township Planning Commission. Both were recommended for approval. So our text amendment is fairly simple and straightforward, but it kind of ties into our other plan, but we can talk about it. We can talk about it now or at 7 o'clock, however you want to proceed.
I think we probably ought to stick with our agenda.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody online? Supervisor Worcester, Supervisor Swamley?
Yeah, just one. In the project narrative, that we have very last sentence on the project narrative, probably second page. York County Planning Commission recommended the township adopt the proposed zoning ordinance amendments with one point of clarity that is stated in the review letter. I wasn't sure which one it was that they were saying. I just want to be clear on that. Probably more of a question for Randall.
Yes, I just grabbed the YCPC report here, and it indicates that for clarity, township officials should consider revising subsection 2A to state the building height may be increased by 1 foot for each additional foot that the building setback is increased. And going back to what was requested.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't sure which point they were talking about, and I wanted to make sure that we had that covered.
Understood.
I looked at it too. The only thing ours says the height may be increased, and they, of course, said the building height. So I didn't, and then it was, maybe increased for 1 additional foot, that the width of each yard exceeds the minimum required up to a maximum of 100 feet. So again, we paralleled your language from your other sections just to kind of keep them consistent. It's, I think, just more of a drafting style of more than substance.
I would agree with that.
But again, for consistency, we kept it the same.
Yeah, I concur with that.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions on?
I do have a question. This is Charles. Maybe it's Randall that could refresh my memory. Have we refreshed my memory? What was our analysis of what implications this will have for the flexible zone throughout the township? I think we looked at that. I think I know the answer, but can you refresh our memory?
I'm not.
Thanks, Charles. I don't remember either.
I'm not.
I know we looked at it, and I know we were okay with it but let's revisit it.
Randall, his question is, we're doing this for everywhere in the township that
That's
has the
correct.
flex, and so he wants to know.
Right.
What are the implications for that?
Right.
I would think of it as very similar to what we did with the mixed-use district, that the question is, are you willing to allow some additional height that you didn't previously allow to go upward instead of outward? And I think I stated that in the summary, and I don't think that that's detrimental to Springettsbury Township in any manner, long as it's in some sort of controlled manner. And I think the mixed-use district and now this district is not creating some sort of aesthetic indifference, if you will, to the township by raising the height. And then if they raise it above the 55 feet. Then
So Randall,
yes, sir.
Randall, I think the question is, in the analysis, last time when it was, what was that, mixed use?
Yes, correct.
We identified every piece of land that was large enough in mixed use that could be impacted by that change. Did we do that with flexible development?
There is no.
And the reason why, I think that because it's a little bit more difficult for the flexible development, your flexible overlay. So your mixed use, you have a specific zone and say, here it is. In the flexible overlay that this is going to be applied to, the overlay is applied to certain base zones. So you have various base zones that are there, but the flexible overlay can only be used as a conditional use. So the supervisors have control over saying, yes, this project can be used, the overlay can be used in connection with this project. So if for some reason you come in and there's a piece of property that you don't want the flexible overlay to be used for whatever purposes that you want to deny that, that's kind of in your discretion, because this overlay zone, what we're going to be talking about at 7 is, now that I amended this, can I apply that to my piece of to this piece of property over at the Galleria? You have every right to say no. And you know, we want to be able to justify that. So there is another level of control that the township has with regard to how this is applied, the overlays applied. So I think that makes it a little more difficult to kind of just walk through every piece of property that's there. Because you already have a built-in kind of quote fail-safe.
James, do you concur with that analysis?
I do, and I did discuss this, and I brought it to Attorney Nahila's attention that unintended consequences of doing this would need to be addressed at this hearing. So we did go through it, and I concur that when you're looking at some of the other areas in the township that are of similar nature, what's being requested here is not too dissimilar from that. So I would concur that.
But Tom's analysis that we still have a secondary.
You absolutely do. Yep, you absolutely do.
Then I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I think unlike your mixed use where you changed it, it was like, well, if I come in and I have a permitted use that falls in the mixed use, I can go.
Yep.
For this one, you can't. You have to come in and still do a conditional use. So,
Great. No.
another level.
Any other questions?
Yeah, that answers mine. Charles, is that good for you?
Yeah, I'm good. And I mean, right, we have the controls plus, you know, and I'm even flexible in flex development too. So it's not like we have a lot of flex development space, but it is large space, and I think we need to be as flexible as we can. I'm okay with this, with it leading to a reduction in impervious, even if we didn't really do a thorough analysis of every flex development track.
Okay. With that being said, any other, just one last chance, any other comments, questions before I open it up for public comment? Okay.
Not for me.
Do we have any members of the public that, we'll end the hearing stage and ask for any public comment related to this text amendment. Okay, there being none, I will open it up to the supervisors for any further discussion, or if you'd like to make a motion to approve, we can do that. We can go into executive session. It's up to you.
I'm not, can we really approve it now?
You can approve it to move to advertisement?
To advertise.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
yes.
And,
Because the advertisement of the ordinance is on the regular, authorization to advertise the ordinance is on the regular
Yeah.
meeting.
Correct, correct.
Correct.
I'm personally a little uncomfortable in doing that now when it's on our agenda for our next meeting.
Okay.
I think the property
I
will
agree
still
with
be
Acting
there.
Chairman Bishop.
The property will still be there for our 7 o'clock meeting, so.
We will still be here, yes.
All right, with that being said, no other further public comment, no other comment from the supervisors. We will conclude this hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll get started. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Springettsbury Township Board of Supervisors to order. Our chairman is online along with another commissioner, Mr. Worcester, and Mr. Cox and I are here in real life. So would you all please join me in the pledge to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, executive sessions, we need to announce 2 executive sessions on April 24th. One at 6:30 to discuss legal issues and another one at 8:08 p.m. to discuss legal issues. Next item on our agenda is communications from citizens, so anyone in the room can be recognized and come to the microphone, please. And if we've got anyone online, please raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Anyone? I'm not going to beg. Okay, great.
Got it easy tonight, Don.
Seeing none, we'll move on to engineering reports. Our environmental engineer, Buchard Horn, welcome.
I'm Sherry Wolf filling in for Diana Young again. She had sent you an update of our progress last week as of May 1st. So are there any comments or questions?
Anyone? Looks like we're good. Thank you very much. Our civil engineer, Mr. Luciani.
Good evening. I simply reported on some of the zoning hearing board cases and subdivision work, but I don't have any additions to my written report. But I think it was the Malimo floodplain request was approved by the zoning hearing board. Now they're going to go through a land development with their waterproof building. And then there was a fence at the corner of Kingston Road and Edgewood Road, and we've had some historical stormwater problems, and the zoning hearing board tabled that decision in an effort to get more detail of where these stormwater easements are. So I've reached out to the property owner to try to give her an idea where those locations are, because she wanted to put a closed fence at that location, and some of her neighbors were opposed to that too. So that's all I have as far as updates. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Our consent agenda just has 2 items, minutes from April 24 and payables. Anyone like to make a motion?
Move to approve consent agenda items A and B.
Question or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 And that passes unanimously. Bids, proposal, contracts.
Mr. Bishop, the items A, B, and C are all related to one another. They're all traffic signal easement agreements that we need at various corners of Eastern Boulevard and Northern Way intersection and Eastern Boulevard and Kingston Road intersection for future traffic signal improvements project. I recommend authorization of all 3.
Anyone object to taking all 3 in one motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move for the authorization for chairman to execute traffic signal easements, items 6A, 6B, and 6C as documented.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Subdivision and land development. So we have a request to authorize use of the flexible development zone. This is what we heard about previously.
Yes, we do have the team here representing Monarch Development Group for this as well. This was mentioned during the public hearing for the zoning amendments. And so this is requesting authorization from the Board of Supervisors to allow the flexible development overlay to be utilized for the project that they're referenced in the public hearing. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Nahila and his team to speak to that. Thank you.
Good evening again. Tom Nahila from Barley Snyder. I'm here with Brandon Johnson from Monarch Development, Jake Krieger from RGS Associates. The property, we are here to discuss our application to allow the flexible development overlay to be applied to the property we're about to talk about. That property is an approximate 2.5 acre piece of land that will be subdivided from a currently existing 7.5 acre parcel of land. It's located within the Galleria Mall, located at 2899 Whiteford Road. It's in your commercial highway district, and it's also subject to your town center overlay as well as the flexible development overlay. The applicant, Monarch Development, is an equitable owner under an agreement of sale for the piece of property. Property owner, which is WMG York LLC, has authorized all of our submissions. So we are proposing to develop the property into a 98-unit multifamily dwelling complex. And as I said, we submitted our application. So your flexible development overlay allows the supervisors at their sole discretion. I do apologize. I said conditional use earlier. It is not a conditional use. It's literally at your sole discretion to apply the overlay to tracts of land that are 2 acres or more. We are above that in certain base zones, and one of those base zones is the commercial highway district that we're talking about. So there are criteria that need to be hit before the flexible development overlay can be applied. One of those is any structure or site that's vacant for 1 calendar year or more. So as you know, due to changes in the mall and some of the other things that have happened across the country, and in particular your Galleria Mall, that's been changed over the years. The casino's there, there's self-storage is there. This piece that we're going to subdivide our 2.5 acres off of is the piece that's currently used for the self-storage. So that's that 7.5 acre piece in the back of the mall kind of used there. So a large part of that parking lot, which is where we are going to propose to locate our multifamily, is being currently unused. So we do feel that this is a good piece of property to apply that flexible overlay. The purpose of that flexible overlay is to allow for the use of vacant and underutilized lands through redevelopment, which is exactly what we're proposing. A multifamily dwelling is a principal permitted use under that flexible overlay. So this is a permitted use within the flexible overlay district. So we can hit all of the bulk requirements under the ordinance, which we will go into in a little bit of detail here as I ask Jake to come up and kind of walk themselves through. And then we will also hit the building height requirements and the off-street parking, as we discussed earlier, as amended. We will be able to hit those as amended. And then under your ordinance, the overlay, the application of the overlay is one of those things that need to be reviewed by your planning commission. And as we spoke earlier, both the text amendment and this overlay application were both recommended by the Township's Planning Commission. So at this time, I'm going to have Jake come up, and the plan is here in front of you, and we'll just have Jake kind of walk through what we are proposing. Jake?
Good evening. So the area is 2.5 acres, kind of highlighted in color on the plan here. The project proposes a 4-story, 98-unit apartment, multifamily apartment building with parking, landscaping, and some site amenities. The drive to the plan right is the main access into kind of this parking compound, and then you can kind of see our parking lot accesses off of that main drive. So the main drive is not on our property; it would be on the residual lot, and then we would access off of that, and then a couple access points off of Ring Road. But you can see the majority of each of these existing parking bays access onto Ring Road, and so we're removing some of those access points onto Ring Road as well with this. So I'd like to go over all the area and bulk regulations. I'll just highlight some of them, and if you have any questions or would like me to go in further detail on them, I'd be happy to answer any questions. So the project exceeds the required setbacks of 20 feet for the front, 15 for the side, and 25 for rear yards. The proposed building height complies with the proposed text amendment that was previously discussed for the flexible development overlay of 60 feet, and the plans provide the additional 5 feet required for setbacks for additional 5 feet over the 55-foot permitted height for that text amendment. The proposed building coverage is 25%, so it's below the 50% requirement. Next is building materials will vary be a variety of materials complying within the ordinance. The applicant does request the use of asphalt shingles, which was also approved by the Planning Commission. The project will...
Just as a quick oddity of the way your ordinance is set up, for us to use asphalt shingles in this project, that has to be approved by your planning commission. So it was approved there, but that is part of what we're applying for.
The project will meet the lighting requirements with as required per the ordinance. We show lighting on this plan as well. It incorporates landscaping materials to adequately buffer and landscape the project. A landscape strip is provided as required along the rear yard. You can see kind of along the bottom of the plan of the 2.5 acres. And it provides 8.21% for interior landscaping, which exceeds the 5%. And that's for within the parking areas. Parking is proposed, 147 spaces are proposed, and this is to comply with the 1.5 spaces per unit proposed as part of this text amendment. And you see majority of them are in the parking lot, and then there are a few parking spaces that are on-street parking, parallel parking along Ring Road between the building. Signage, which will be on the building, will meet any signage requirements of this, of the ordinance. And the proposed project will not substantially change the character of the surrounding neighborhood, and we'll look to integrate with the existing buildings and uses in that area. Thank you.
With regard to the application and the applying the overlay, your ordinance kind of has these design standards, a lot of this general, we have kind of put together a mock-up, which we're showing here. Of course, you know, if approved here, we will then go into land development. We will have to comply with all the land development requirements, the stormwater and everything else, and then every other requirement. So we will be back if and when we're approved at this point. But this basically would allow us to apply that flexible overlay district to this piece of property, and then we will comply with the requirements from there. This is a rendering of the site. Brenda, you want to kind of walk through? Just kind of, just some of the highlights?
Yeah, sure. I'll just add the Brandon Johnson with Monarch.
You need to use the microphone. They can't hear you.
Oh, sure. Brandon Johnson with Monarch Development Group. We are developing this deal in partnership with Vanguard Development Group. They would also be the design build contractor. They prepared this rendering, which is why their logo is there. Yeah, we use a mix of brick or cultured stone, vinyl siding, vertical and horizontal vinyl siding, as we discussed, asphalt shingles. Yeah, we plan to have a number of balconies like you're seeing here. So this kind of aesthetically form functions very similar to another deal that we did with Vanguard as well, called Signature Flats at Hershey. Yeah, happy to answer other questions. It'll be a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments.
Aesthetically, as you can see, we're using a sloped roof. That's a little bit why we needed the height requirement, the text amendment with regard to the height. Kind of gives it a nicer look than the flat roof. Kind of blends into the area here a little bit more. But yeah, we'll open it up for questions.
So I just want to be sure I understand that the main action that you're looking for today is for us to approve applying the flexible overlay.
Correct, yes.
And the ordinance lists specific criteria for that.
The design criteria, yes. Some of the
Not
ones that
design criteria as much as the criteria, whether we can apply that, what parcels we can apply it to.
Correct, there is a list, yes. One being the underused vacant lots for over a calendar year, or a site vacant for over a calendar year is one of the criteria that we can.
So your argument is that 2.5 acre parking lot, which is still part of the 7.5 acre, that lot is underutilized or is vacant?
It is kind of underutilized. The piece of the 7.5 is the self-storage. So as you probably know, for self-storage, not used every day. So I forget what your parking requirements even are. It's like 1 space for 25, or it's pretty high. Only because it's not, the lot itself is not utilized. So this piece of it being pushed back away from the self-storage is literally not used.
Okay, yeah. I'm all in favor of this.
No,
I just don't understand, it's kind of, I'm a little confused about, it hasn't been subdivided yet, so it's still part of that, but it will be subdivided.
Correct.
And as a parking lot, I guess it's, I don't know, can a parking lot be vacant?
Can be underutilized, I don't know. if
Well,
it can be
actually,
vacant.
underutilized is not one of the criteria that I see in the copy
vacant, yeah.
of what I'm looking at.
Gotcha.
Yes, you are correct. The criteria that we are relying on is any structure or site vacant for 1 calendar year.
Okay.
So we are looking at it as a vacant. And it is, you are correct, it's part of a 7 acre that we're going to take off the 2.5 acres.
Okay. I'll get over it. Anybody else have questions?
Semantics, Don. If it was subdivided first, we wouldn't be having the discussion.
Tom, I have a couple questions and a comment. First question is, these are market rate apartments? You mentioned 1 and 2 bedroom, but market rate as opposed to? Yeah. Okay. And the second one is really more a comment. My only concern here, I'm 100% in favor of a residential use in the mall. Have you talked with CBL at all? Do they have any plans to add, the owners of the mall, to add residential anywhere else on the site?
Yes, we have talked with CBL. So the mall is owned generally by two major companies, WMG, which owns this 7.5 acres, and then CBL owns most of the rest of the property of the mall. And then Boscov's has their own kind of
Correct.
piece of it too. We actually had to get consent from Boscov's because of the way that their agreement was structured with CBL. We had to get consent from them to do what we're doing. We have that consent now from them. Yep. And CBL is also, yeah, they're on board with this as well. We got Boscov's consent yesterday, which enables CBL to sign their agreement, basically. Yes, and CBL hasn't mentioned any other plans to develop any other residential at the mall, but I would anticipate as the years to come, the mall will get revitalized, re-envisioned, however, as it already kind of started to be with the casino and the self-storage and such, so, yeah.
Could you throw the site plan up again? Is there sufficient parking for the lower level of the Bonton for the self-storage facility user?
Yes.
Where will they have access?
Yeah,
It looks like you're taking almost all the
That's-
parking lot right up to the front of their building.
Yeah, they have two floors of self-storage there. And I believe we did look up these calculations, and I think that the ordinance required for the number of storage lockers that they have, it's a very low parking rate. It's 24. So they still have hundreds of parking spaces, and they even have well in excess of 24 at the lower level there at that on the left, if you see there.
Okay, so they'll be able to access the lower level from that side of the building.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
The only other comment I want to make is, again, I'm 100% in favor of upgrading and adding residential to the mall. The unintended consequence, if excess storage ever goes out of business and a retail use or an office use wants to take over that building, this will preclude them from having adequate parking adjacent to their property to do that. I don't know that that'll ever happen. but
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out to everyone.
There, I mean,
There's a decent amount of parking.
yeah, there is. There's other parking off there beyond the boundary of their section of the parking lot, obviously. And their operating agreement, there's an operating agreement between WMG and CBL, which enables them to basically share parking regardless of those property lines. And obviously, WMG, with which we have our agreement of sale, is aware of that. They're
Sure.
taking that chance.
I've been doing this for 55 years. I can tell you, if Nordstrom wants to come into the Bonton building, they don't want your development there.
Understood, yeah.
But other than that, under the current circumstances, I'm 100% in favor of it.
Yeah, thank you. We think, as we've said at prior meetings, having feet nearby, people that can walk to the mall, into the building, it will open up some doors in terms of what the mall owners can do.
Sure.
So it's mutually beneficial.
Yep. Agreed.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I guess what we need then is a motion to authorize using the flexible development overlay for this property.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Right. Thank you. Well, take a little break, don't go anywhere.
We'll stick around.
Communication from supervisors?
Nothing for me, Don.
Did Charles have a good
Well-
week in Hershey?
I did, and I wanted to give a brief report, just a quick update on some of the activities. First of all, I'm sure you're all excited to know the outcome of the floor debate relative to all the resolutions that you saw. I must say this year was probably the quickest conversation on resolutions. There was not as many, and they all passed pretty much exactly what you saw in your board packet a couple weeks ago. No debate, no real change. There was some clarification on a couple, but they all pretty much went right down the line as you see it in your packet. So nothing really new shaking there. The one interesting thing was I did attend the 10,000 and over population committee, which Springettsbury fits into in that class. And the biggest question there through most of our hour-long discussion was on how municipalities are trying to consolidate police or start a new police department. Some townships are covered by state police, and they were asking how much does it cost to run a police department and so forth. They're a little smaller than us, and so some of the smaller department or townships with smaller departments chimed in. Well, it's about $2.5 million, and we got about 15 officers. We're about double that plus. So that was an interesting discussion to hear how the state police plays with some and how other departments have it, or how they contract out with a neighboring municipality. The idea of municipal cooperation or municipal consolidation or regional police force came in to play. And when we had representatives from our own Windsor Township and Manchester Township to kind of comment on there at that statewide forum. So that was a real interesting discussion. There was a little bit of a theme going on that we had the opportunity to sign this huge placard that basically said, you know, you sign your name if you were opposed to statewide zoning. There still is an effort on the part of perhaps the House of Representatives to pass statewide zoning that kind of preempts or trumps local control of your zoning ordinance and so forth. So members had the opportunity to make a statement against it, and a lot of members did. And the last thing that I will mention at this point, just as a summary for the conference, that Springettsbury Township consistently was represented for another year in a row in the Parade of Flags. The Parade of Flags has gotten up to about 40 municipalities carry their flag on stage. We have been a part from the start, so it was my honor to represent Springettsbury Township at the start of the convention through the Parade of Flags, and I'm happy to answer any questions with regard to the conference.
Well, Charles, I'd like to thank you for bringing the flag back safely. Appreciate
It
that.
is all in one piece. I did have to do a little minor tap, tap, tap on the little nails there, holding it together there, that one bracket there. So then he may want to take a look at it for next year.
Charles, do you have any video of you carrying? No, never mind. Never mind.
There is, actually. There is some out there. If you go to the PSAT's website, I think they have me up there.
And I will also add my thanks for you participating again this year on our behalf.
I'm not pleased with the camera angles that they used in that video, but there you go.
You have to get yourself on that committee next year. Any other
Indeed.
questions for Charles or any other communication from supervisors? Okay, we'll move on. Number 9, committee reports. I've been wanting to do this for years. Do we have any committees?
Not to report anything.
Any committees that actually exist?
Well, we have the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. We have the Camp Security Master Plan Steering Committee.
Okay.
Well, and we do have, I won't call it a report, but we have 2 new plans, mock-ups of what camp
From
security could
Camp
look
Security
like.
there,
That
okay.
will be available at the public meeting, which is
The 19th
the 19th
of this month.
of this month.
Right. Okay, solicitors report.
No report.
You've been keeping up with all the other committees. Good job.
Attend all those meetings.
Managers report. We have the managers report. Any questions for the manager?
I
Anything
did
the
submit a
manager wants to-
report, and I do not have anything to add to that report, but gladly answer any questions.
No questions for the manager? Guess not. Okay, under ordinance and resolutions, we are considering authorization to advertise the ordinance for the apartment, essentially, that we've been talking about since 6 o'clock.
Mr. Bishop, this is, just to clarify, this, all the board is doing right now is authorizing the advertisement of the ordinance. No further action is needed tonight.
Anyone have any questions? I think we've kind of heard about this.
Yeah, then I would move for authorization to advertise the ordinance amending Springettsbury Township zoning ordinance to incorporate off-street parking provisions and modify the building height requirements of the flexible development district.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Anyone want to discuss anything on our agenda under old business?
Mr. Chairman, I do want to talk about the 11th Avenue and the traffic calming challenge that we're having in that neighborhood. I will share a story again from PSAT's conference and the 10,000 and Over committee. One township discussed, and I apparently got some real interesting news here in eastern Pennsylvania, is that for their effort at traffic calming, they actually introduced chicanes. If you're familiar with the chicanes, this is you have to weave in and out. We kind of have a little bit maybe of one over there on Eastern Boulevard, but not quite the extent and level that this township did. They were put in by the township for traffic measures. 95% of the community hated them and gave a lot of backlash to that township. So I'm not saying that we put chicanes in over there at 11th Avenue, but it begat the question and discussion in our committee about what do we do about traffic? The overwhelming consensus was to help with traffic are those individual signs that say posted speed limit 25 miles an hour with the little radar box below that tells the driver what their speed is. And it can animate whenever you're exceeding the speed limit, or it can be off when you're below the speed limit. And that wasn't enough of the consensus of enough townships there in that committee said this really worked. One township has about 8 of these things around the township. I don't know if deploying a couple of key points in that neighborhood is something worthy of exploration. I have seen these throughout the Commonwealth and other locations. It is more than that trailer that you sit there with the radar and it kind of flashes. Now this is more of it's a more compact design, and I'm sure Public Works and I'm sure Mark Hodgkinson have seen, and I'm sure all of you have seen some version of it. But I just offer that in as part of the conversation, something that we did hear about at the conference.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful because it is very difficult to explain to people when they say you really need to do something, that most of the things we've tried, circles and humps and all of that, and it ends up not really helping and people hate it. So.
The other issue, I was just going to say the other issue with that is that not all of the residents are amenable to putting in speed tables, speed humps, chicanes, other traffic calming measures. So it's really difficult to tell one resident of an area that we're not going to put something in that they want because a whole bunch of other people don't want it. And it doesn't really leave us a whole lot of options.
What I was going to add, just since we're on the 10th and 11th area, is today or yesterday, one of the two, we installed the temporary speed humps back on Whiteford Road. We did not put them on 10th Avenue yet because the police are still doing their traffic speed study and want to complete that before we put this temporary speed humps back in. So hopefully within the next couple weeks, they go back in on 10th.
Great.
Mr. Hodgkinson, do we have any of these, for lack of a better term, speed signs with radar and a
Well-
feedback digital LED display?
We have them, so the ones we have are portable, but it's basically the same thing that you're talking about, but we move the sign around, and that's actually what conducts that's our data center for the traffic studies of the speed and traffic counts. But I know 3 or 4 of what you're describing in neighboring communities to Springettsbury that have been in place for quite some time, and they do exactly what you're saying. They don't turn on until your speed, some of them don't turn on until your speed's above the posted speed limit. But it flashes or does some sort of strobe to get your attention of you're entering that zone, I guess, and what the speed limit is and what your current speed is. I don't know how successful they are, but they're around.
Yeah, they seem to be moderately successful from what the consensus was of the people that were discussing it, but I don't know how many township that was.
One,
I just offer it might be something else for us to consider in that zone.
York and a borough has them. They have one in both directions when you're entering the borough. And it does what I just explained. It flashes your speed, and then a strobe goes off if you're going over the speed limit.
Yeah.
Perfectly happy to try something new that could potentially help.
Yeah, it doesn't sound particularly expensive either.
No, and anything that'll help alleviate the issues over there would be terrific.
Great, thank you, Charles, for that. Anything else?
Sure. Hope it helps.
Under old business? I have nothing under new business. So I assume we're adjourned. Up.
Can I just get one point of clarification? I know you guys passed the authorization to advertise the ordinance. At our 6 o'clock hearing, we concluded that hearing. Are we waiting till the advertising is made to then come back with regard to whether that has passed?
Once the advertisement occurs for 30 days.
After it occurred, do we need to come back to get the vote, or?
It's up to supervisors, but it will be on the agenda for adoption at that.
Okay,
That would be the June meeting.
Correct.
And you never know what we might do.
you never know what you might do, yes. I appreciate the clarification, thank you.
But we're required to advertise it before we can adopt.
Not knowing what the outcome of the hearing was going to be, in an abundance of caution in case there was any changes to it, I put it on the agenda for advertisement. Technically, you could have had it for adoption tonight, but again, not knowing what you were going to do at the hearing, I wanted to put it on for advertisement. So not to change the agenda, that's why we put it on for advertisement, to be safe.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. I guess we're adjourned. Thank you.